Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar. My name is Joanna. I'm a marketing product manager at Centreon and I will be your host for today's webinar. Should you have any questions or concerns, please let us know in the question or chat panel on the right of your screen. Here with us today is Pierrick Martet, Product Marketing Manager, and Etienne Gauthier, Product Manager. Should you have any questions during the broadcast, please use the panel to the right. We'll collect those and answer them at the end of the webinar. Now, I'd like to pass the mic to Pierrick to start.
Thanks. Welcome to everybody. Twice a year, we release a new software version of our flagship solution, Centreon EMS, in April and October. So the most recent one was released on October the 16th, and this is what we are about to discuss. As an introduction, I'd like to show a slide explaining the two reasons why we are doing monitoring to start with. First reason is because we need to monitor the infrastructure itself, and this infrastructure is becoming much more diverse than it used to be. It used to be a legacy equipment in a data center and VMware maybe. I know it's more about Kubernetes and multi-cloud and private cloud environment, and at the same time, all these fancy applications which are being developed in the cloud are being used in a brick and mortar environment at the remote office, at the bank agency, or in a retail store. This is on the left-hand side of my diagram here. So that's the first reason in order to monitor this infrastructure. But the real reason is the second reason. All this infrastructure is redundant, so it's not so much a problem if something fails. What we need to know is whether these critical IT services that are fueling or running our business are really being delivered end-to-end from these fancy cloud technologies platform all the way to the edge of the network. So that's what we are working on when we are working on our roadmap. And by discussing with our customers, we figure out that there are 3 steps to achieve and to successfully focus on in order to have this business view of the monitoring. These 3 steps are the fact that you need to automate the configuration of IT monitoring. There's no way you could monitor this infrastructure manually because it's too dynamic and diverse. The second one is that you need to do some service mapping to have business meaningful KPIs and not just infrastructure meaningful KPIs. And the first step is about viewing and sharing these indicators. So let's go on to step 1, and I will tell you what 19.10 is bringing new on step 1. Step 1 is about automation, and in fact there are 2 functionalities which are working hand in hand together in order to fully automate the way you will configure Centreon. One is about APIs. APIs has been around for a long time. Centreon is an API-centric solution, and everything can be configured through APIs. The other one is a more newer functionality, which is discovery. This is for Centreon itself to discover assets that must be discovered. And what we're saying is that the 2 mechanisms are complementary. For example, your Ansible IT automation tool will use the API to configure all the new Linux servers which are being deployed, and the auto discovery feature from Centreon will discover on this Centreon server all the network interfaces or disk volumes that must be monitored. And this is working by leveraging the configuration templates, host templates, service templates, which are built in what we call the plugin packs. So this is what is 2 complementary mechanisms. And 6 months ago, we started by having host discovery for the cloud technologies, Amazon, Azure, or for VMware. We're still working on Google Compute Engine because they still have beta versions of their APIs, and for now, these APIs can't do everything we need to do the discovery of the assets in the cloud. But in 19.10, we can also discover things which are more not in the cloud, like software-defined wide area network, SD-WAN. Centreon can connect to VeloCloud, which is an SD-WAN platform, and from this VeloCloud platform, discover all the networks equipment and start configuring them. Or that also applies to the Wi-Fi networks. Centreon can connect to your Aruba or Alcatel controller, Wi-Fi controller, and from there get the list of all the access points, all the Wi-Fi access points on your network in order to configure them. And it can go further than that. We can also connect to your IT automation tool where, because these IT automation tools such as Ansible, they have a list of equipment which are being deployed in your infrastructure, where we can connect to their API, get that list, and start configuring the monitoring. We do that with Ansible or with Rudder, but we could do it with more tools, and this is for you to tell us which tools you're using and you want us to discover. Also in 19.10, there is a LAN discovery feature. All these discovery rules are part of the plugin packs, and if you search for a plugin pack which is called generic SNMP, it's in the protocol plugin packs, you will see that it has a discovery rule where you can enter a subnet and it will automatically discover all the equipment on the LAN. So that's 19.10 in order to make sure you can fully automate everything as part of configuring the monitoring. Step 2 is about service mapping. There's no magic here. If you want to have a business view, you need to do a service mapping of all your critical IT workflows which are supporting your business processes. So here, our feature is called Business Activity Monitoring, or BAM. What we are showing here on the screen is a BA, a business activity, which is a dependency tree showing all the dependence of low-level equipment into a higher level KPI. And when you do this work of service mapping, then you get real-time views on whether the overall application is working, yes or no, or you also have service level agreements monitoring for your weekly or monthly reports. 19.10, we've improved on the user interface on how to create and manage these business activities. And there is two reasons to create business activities. One is the obvious reasons. You want to map your complex active workflows so that your, maybe supply chain is working or e-commerce is working. But also service mapping can be very useful to do a modeling of each remote site that you have. On a remote site, you want the routers, access routers to work, maybe the Wi-Fi, maybe the firewall, maybe a few other equipment, and you can use a business activity to have a little KPI for each of these remote sites. So I will let Etienne show us what has been improved in 19.10 as regards the creation and managing of business activities.
Hello, thank you, Pierrick. Okay, yes, so in this 19.10 version, we really try to improve the way the user create the service mapping, so the business activity, which is the name for Centreon. So as you can see here, it's a brand new interface for those who already know the previous one, where we can find two principal things, two major things. On the left, we have the listing part that has been totally redesigned. So it means that we improve the way we can interact with this list. So if you put the mouse over, you can directly act on the line. We put the main action that you do on the line, so such as deleting, duplicating, or enabling or disabling the application or the service. And as soon as you check one or multiple box, you also have efficient massive action that also contains a duplicate, delete, and so on. So this listing is more efficient, and of course you can search. So this listing is more efficient, and the main change that also came is this panel on the right. So before, in the previous version, when you want to modify an object, it's the same for a host or a service. You have to click on it, and then you go to a detailed page where you configure using tabs all the fields and the parameters of the object. So now, to make this more efficient and to make this faster, improve the speed. As soon as you click on one line, this panel opens over the listing, and then you have directly access to all the parameters that are all aggregated by section, by logical sections that you can collapse or not. And as soon as you click on another line, it opens it directly here. So switching for a business activity to another one is really easy and efficient when you are updating or creating new business activity. Then, as you can see here, we have a new multi-select. So when you have multiple objects to select, you know how it looks in Centreon. And now we designed a new one that we directly applies to the indicator you link to business activity. So if you remember the picture from the service mapping that Pierrick showed, you have object and then they are linked to other objects. Before you needed to go to 2 different pages to manage that. Now everything is managed in the same page. You just have a preview here, and then as soon as you click on the indicator, you can directly link them, search and link the indicators and configure them to the business activity. So in this case, we have a camera, IP camera that is connected in the FR Paris Montparnasse site, and then it has a blocking impact when it fails. So you efficiently configure directly your indicators here, and then you can just directly save here, and the floppy disk tells you whether you need or not to save, whether you modify or not the form. So it's really efficient, and when you are in that view, you still can click here and change from business activity to another business activity. And for testing it with user, in the previous way before 19.10, it took some minutes to create this 2 or 3 or 4 level of service mapping. Now to create exactly the same tree, it takes several seconds, let's say 20, 30 seconds to have the same result. So it's really more efficient and easier for people to modify and update the configuration. As you can see here, we have also a section that is called displayed that didn't exist before, and it's linked to what Pierrick said just before. The activities, the business activities and the people working, it happens also geographically. So it's not only in one data center, but a lot of the time you have remote sites, stores, maybe some data centers also, or activities happening in the world. So now with this section, you can define one thing, which is the geo coordinate, and you will see later that it means that this business activity can be displayed on a GeoView that is coming from another function, another feature called Centreon Map. And you also have what we call the infrastructure view that correspond to a view that you created using Centreon Map. So every activity always happens with some infrastructure that is just under this basic level of information. So when you create a business activity, you only map the critical path that tells you whether or not a business or people are able to work. When you create a map, you put all the infrastructure that is related to this special store, let's say, and then you can access it directly. So if we combine these 2 features in one, we have geographically business activity that is positioned in Paris, and then for now everything is green, but I can directly access to the infrastructure that is related to this business activity. So if I click here, it will open this inside the page, and so you can directly see that everything is fine from the user's point of view. So it's green here, it's green, but actually there is one little problem with the music. But it's not critical for the business, so that's why the business activity is still green. So this is new. You can put business activity geographically, and then you can access directly to more complex visualization of the infrastructure that is under the hood of that business activity. And the last thing we also add in this version to make it easier to configure the notification. So when the applications that are described in business activity or the activities that you describe, you want to notify people before the notification happens on business activity. Now you can configure it directly to contact. And in our example, when this business activity, the business activity related to this contact fails, then when it's critical during the work hours, it sends a notification in Slack. So that may looks like a use case you have. So now you can also configure it in the contact template.
All right, thank you, Etienne. So step 1 was about automation. Step 2 was about service mapping of your business processes. Step 3 is about sharing the business relevant monitoring information with everybody. And what we are saying is that there are 4 types of views that you need. You need a very high level cockpit view, where it's really the summary of your business infrastructure, I would say. You need some more detailed dashboards for the engineers to maintain in operational conditions all these critical parts of your infrastructure. You also need the event view, because once in a while there are some critical events that needs to be taken care of very quickly. And you need some analytics and reports which are produced automatically in order to maintain your business performance along the year. So Centreon EMS provides these 4 types of views. And in 19.10, we've worked on what we call the graphical views. They are provided by the map functionalities. And we worked on 2 things. One are GeoViews, geographical views. And the second one is about automation again, making sure that through APIs, you can create many different views. So let's go through that with Etienne.
Yeah, as you said, we worked on the GeoView. So GeoView is a feature that we released in the previous version. It had a lot of features, but we wanted to add more because the users asked us to make some evolution. So what you can now find is this 90.10 is a fully featured GeoView, which means that we have included the most important feature that you may want to use when you want to display your resources geographically. So first, you still have to choose a provider. So by default, we come with OpenStreetMap and Mapbox. But if ever you have an internal mapping server, you can also connect it to Centreon and then use it internally without being obliged to connect to internet. Then, as you already understood, before we had only hosts that you were able to display on the GeoView. Now you can display business activities and also host group. So this type of resource of Centreon can be added in the same geographical view. So you can really mix this type of resource in the same view. Then when you click on them, you have immediately access to a tooltip that displays the corresponding information. So if you're on the business activity, you will have the list of the things that are impacting the business activity. And for a host, the service that are not okay, for instance. Then when you have a lot of objects, and that's the case for a lot of people that use the geographical view, you have the automatic clustering. So that makes it possible in one page to see hundreds or even thousands of resources in a geographic view. So that makes it more efficient and usable. And then we added contextual layers. So we know that in many business, there are other information that only monitoring. So we have the monitoring information, but we may also want to add some contextual information around or just next to the IT infrastructure. And so that's what we call the contextual layers. So it looks like that. So this is just an example where we put the traffic and the temperature on the map. But you have to understand that it's possible to connect to any service that use the tilemap server protocol, tilemap service. So this is just an example. So if you have private data or data that are just in your enterprise and connected to your map server, you can add them to the infrastructure view. So it helps you to understand what's happening when something goes red. Maybe it's because something that you know internally is happening. So that's it for the GeoView, the visual part. Now, just for you to know where it's configured, as it was before, you configure the tile server provider here. So it's still here, of course. But then we just added this part where you can add multiple layers, and then you can just enable or disable them. And in your map, when you have added this layer, for instance, it will appear at the bottom, at the top left, sorry, just to activate or enable or disable it directly on the view. So it's really efficient just to add the context, the contextual data just when you need them, and then you just remove them, because sometimes it creates too many data on the view. Then the second thing that we added in Centreon Map, so the viewing capabilities of Centreon, we create an API so that what you were able to do before with our desktop client, so it's about creating views, like the view you've seen previously that may look like that. Now everything you are able to do using the desktop client, you can also do it using API. So here is just some example of what you do. So you can, for instance, create an example, a site that you have to describe, and it's the infrastructure view. And then as soon as you have it, you can export it, modify it, copy it, duplicate it, and reuse it as many times as you want using the API. So with one script, you can create one site and then duplicate it and apply it to other resources that may apply to all the other sites. So of course, all the objects from a map and to the text, colors, properties of host or services can be customized, because it's exactly what you can do with the desktop. You can do it with an API. And then other use case that may sounds clear for you, you can, when you create views on the central server, if you know that you have a remote server and it uses also the map, instead of manually recreating it on the remote server, now you can just use the API to export and import the view. And it's exactly the same mechanism that happens if you have a pre-production platform using Centreon and you want to just create maps, test them, and as soon as they are ready, you can export them and import them to the Centreon platform. So it's just example. I'm sure you will find a lot of other examples to do with the API. And if you need more information on what to do and how to connect and what properties can be managed, you can find them on the API documentation.centreon.com.
Great, good. So that was about 19.10 and the 3 key steps to succeed in having a business-centric monitoring platform. But Centreon EMS is built on top of our open source framework, which is called Centreon or Centreon Open Source. And obviously every 6 months, while we are working on all these fancy features, we are also working under the hood on all the open source framework. And we'd like to share with you here in 2 or 3 slides some of the features that have been improved on the open source part of the product. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we really want to make automatization easy. So we added a new API. So for those who already know the first API, which is also called Clappy, then we add a new API that is just next to the first one. The first one is still perfectly working, but we have a new one that for now help you listing all the real-time information of Centreon and even act on them. So if you want to acknowledge a problem using an API because you're not on Centreon and you have an external application or anything connected to Centreon, you can use this new version of API because it's full REST and it's easier to use and it's more efficient. So don't hesitate to use this new version when it comes to the real-time information that you want to use.
Yeah, and it's fully compatible with much more modern tools because it's using the JSON protocol way of describing things.
Yeah,
much easier to integrate with newer generations of tools that you may have in your production environment.
Exactly. Then when it comes to authentication, we are now compatible with Okta, so using the LDAP protocol. So if you use this technology, you can now use it easily with Centreon. And of course, if you have the Okta browser plugin that comes, it will automatically fill the login and password, and then it's really easy to use. So you have now this new authentication possibility. And we also added the key cloak technology, so the SSO technology using the OpenID. So you can connect to Centreon and you can mix both the standard authentication and the key cloak. So you can activate it or only activate key cloak. When it comes to users, we also added in a lot of places some new filters, or we update them so that the configuration pages are easier to use and you easily find the resources you are looking for. Then if you update, you will also see that the style of the checkbox, radio, tabs, and select has been updated, so they are nicer and they look nicer. And for the widget, we also added more filter because in some places we had some select, but actually the usage were more like multi-selection. So we update this kind of widget, so they are easier to configure and they are more, more useful.
Sure.
Okay. Then let's go a bit in the backend of Centreon, so you understand what happened also. So concerning the ACL calculation, we improved them, and it use less memory. So the time execution of the ACL has really been reduced. Then, as I said, the first version of API, which is called Clappy, is still here, and we even improve the performance of it when you're using it through REST. And then something that is really important is that we increase the performance when you get the graph from the ARD. So it's really a huge performance, and then it makes it faster for the graph, for the charts to be displayed, and you can even have more points in the graph. So the graph appears faster, and then they are more detailed. So this is really important and useful. And then it is also linked to the fact that we are compatible with ARD tool 1.7.x. So this is something that has been improved using the chart. So when you will update to the last version, you will see graphs are more precise. Okay, that's it for some of the backend. And the last thing that we updated Centreon, it's now compatible with PHP 7.2, and it's included with Centreon 19.10. So if you install it, it will install PHP 7.2. Then when it comes to installing Centreon, two things happened. You are now able to install it without the root account. That may be sometimes a limitation when you install it in some environment. And finally, if you go to download.centreon.com, when you want to install Centreon using package, so in production, for example, we have now a script that in one command install everything. So you don't have to install the repository, make the yum command. It will do everything for you and explain, of course, what it does. So it makes it easier and faster to install Centreon using the package.
By the way, the download on Centreon.com page has been
brand new,
renewed. I think it's much easier now to navigate on this page. So please let us know if you think the same.
Yeah. And finally, a lot of security fixes and stabilization things have been done with minor improvement also, but I will not list them now because it's a bit long. So I ask you maybe if you can go to the release note Centreon 19.10, so you have the complete list of security fixes and improvement that were done in Centreon 19.10.
Right. The last slide before we go to the question and answer. This is about our release schedule, and something important here. We don't support all versions altogether.
Yeah, when we will release the next version of Centreon, so the 20.4, we will stop fixing a security fix for Centreon 3.4. So for those who don't know, it was the old way, the old-fashioned way to name Centreon versions, and also the 18.10. So the support, meaning the fixes and critical fixes, will not be done. And then so we encourage you to update your platform to the latest version during these 6 months that are coming.
Great. Just to clarify, your support contract is still valid. If you have a problem with an old version because you haven't updated, they will still, answer your calls and help you fix the problem. But if it requires a software fix, then you will be asked to migrate to a newer version because our R&D is only fixing problems on the 3 last versions, so the 18 months, last 18 months. All right.
Exactly.
This is the half an hour mark. We're done with our slideware, and are there any questions maybe in case we will answer, or maybe everything was clear and there is no questions. Joanna?
Yeah, we have one question. So this is the feature GeoViews for free and a substitution for Centreon map?
Actually, the GeoViews is included in Centreon map. So it's just, we have two main features in Centreon map. The first one is the standard or infrastructure view. When I said infrastructure, it corresponds to the standard view, where you design kind of PowerPoint views, but that are connected to a real-time information. And then the GeoViews are another feature. When things comes geographic, then you can display automatically them on a geographic view. But it's included in Centreon map, so it's not free by design because it's included in Centreon map.
I guess the difference is that it comes with a Centreon map software license, but you don't need the Centreon map desktop client to create GeoViews. They are created directly from the web user interface.
You can create them
through APIs.
Through APIs or directly in the web.
Okay, so it was the only question that we received. I think it's the end of this webinar. So thank you everybody for your attention and have a nice day or evening.
Okay, bye-bye.